Good evening to you from the Prime Minister's hometown, Te Kuiti. We're here as we were 3 years ago with Jim Bolger and Mike Moore. Now then, 3 years ago on this night, Jim Bolger was leader of the opposition and Mike Moore was the Prime Minister. Well, the tables have turned, but they're still the leaders of their two main parties. Tonight, National and Labour will face each other and answer questions from a live audience. The audience has been invited here to a hall from all over the Waikato and Taranaki regions. In just a short while, we'll invite them to put their questions to the party leaders. First up, though, the leaders will each give an opening statement of 2 minutes, and this will be followed by some questions from myself. But now we take a break, and then we'll return with the opening statements from the party leaders.
Friday raised the rodent alarm.
Our mission is to take it out and destroy it.
Beyond 2000 looks at a modern solution to an age-old problem. Beat the heat with an environmentally friendly smoke-free Barbie. The arrival of talkies changed the cinema forever. We'll show you why today's box office biggies look and sound like a magic carpet ride.
Yes!
And Simon finds an easier way to call a cab. Presented by ECNZ. Beyond 2000, Friday following Palmer's Garden Show on 1.
We'll need it for the party, Gary. I'll get the gardening stuff. You make sure you ask the owner bloke for advice.
Beats me what she wants it for.
You'll need hinges, a drill, hammer, paint, a plane.
This reminds me of the one about the bloke who called his bird Cessna. She was a little...
Gary? Now, did you ask for advice, Gary?
Yep, I got a really nice one.
Eh?
We're on your mind 10 together. We've done it again.
Summer, don't you just love it? Get set for a long, hot one with Briscoe's great outdoor sellout. Relax in summer chairs and umbrellas, just $19.99 each. Cook up a storm with gas barbecues, only $89.99. Park yourself on a park bench, just $74.99. Three-piece non-rusting all aluminium outdoor settings, only $178. And resin chairs, just $9.75. The great garden furniture sellout this week at Briscoe's. Summer never looked so good.
Briscoe's can never buy better.
With all the changes taking place in the health system, it's really good to know that Southern Cross are keeping right up with the play. Not only have they increased my existing cover, but they've also introduced a great range of new benefits. But here's where we really win. Even though there are more benefits all round, the premiums are staying the same. I've looked around, and you can't get these benefits for less anywhere else in New Zealand. Southern Cross, guaranteeing you and me more healthcare for every dollar.
How did we get even more home-style taste into Dolmio sauces? By giving you more Dolmio. 15% more. 15% more ripe, juicy tomatoes. 15% more of the finest, all-natural ingredients. All authentically blended so they give you even more great taste and even better value for money. We give you 15% extra, free. That's how we put more of the good things in, so you'll wear a bigger Dolmio grin.
Welcome back to the first of our hometown debates with the leaders of the two major parties. It's his patch, so we invite to the Prime Minister and leader of the National Party, Jim Bolger, to give his opening statement of 2 minutes first.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome back to Te Kuiti, welcome back to the King Country. As Paul said, it's 3 years since we stood on this platform, and on that occasion I set some goals for New Zealand. The goals to reduce interest rates. To get those rates down, we've got them down to the lowest level since 1967. So farmers... so farmers can pay their mortgages, families can buy their home, they can meet the mortgage costs. We said we'd get strong growth in the economy. We have. We were the slowest growing in the OECD. We're the second fastest. That gives us jobs, that creates opportunities, that provides for our future. We said we'd balance the books. That's going to take us just a little longer, but we'll do it in another 2 years. We didn't have unemployment as we hoped, but what we have is more New Zealanders in jobs now than in 1990. What we have is employment growing day by day, whereas in 1990 was going down day by day. We've had 100 persons a day come off the register of unemployed. We want to do better, and that growth that we've got in the economy will ensure that we do better. We also set ourselves some goals that all New Zealanders would ascribe to get a better education system so more New Zealanders could go on. And they are. 80,000 more in tertiary education now. That's good news. We're proud of what we've achieved in short 3 years. We're proud of the support we've had from New Zealanders. We know that we're on the right track. We know that we've got the economy up and growing. There's a new sense of optimism. There's a new sense of confidence. New Zealanders know that we're working together, we're achieving together, and we can make this a wonderful country and make the progress you all want over the next 3 years.
Well, it is going to be a very active audience here in Take a Witty. We now ask the leader of the Labour Party, Mr Mike Moore, to deliver his opening statement of 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Paul. Mr Bolger, Mrs Bolger, men and women of New Zealand, the people of Tika Witty. Tonight is not about Mr Bolger, it's not about me, it's about New Zealand and what kind of country we can become and what kind of country we are now. I think New Zealand deserves better. Look, Tika Witty is a good place, but there's a sad side to Tika Witty, and unfortunately there are too many sad sides to our towns and the cities at the moment. 3 years ago, Mr Bolger did stand in this hall and he did tell you that 25% unemployment in Tika Witty was a crime. It was outrageous. And Mr Bolger was correct when he said 25% unemployment in Tika Witty was bad. And he promised you to halve it. It's gone up by about 20%. 1 in 4 teenagers are standing around with nothing to do but to get into trouble at night. Earlier today, I was at a school in Tokoroa, and the heartache of the teachers when they know that remedial reading and special allowances for special children are being cut. The heartache of the teachers and the parents when they have to dig in their own pockets for food banks that never used to exist. And then I was at a hospital, and I met with the nurses and their anger that were employing more bureaucrats. Nurses ought to be about sick people and doctors and not about charging people to go to their own hospitals. I think it's outrageous, you know. I can never tolerate or accept a situation in my area, for example, when somebody with money can jump the head of a queue, not because they're the sickest, not because they're in the most pain, not because the doctor says you ought to go first, but you've got some money, so you jump the queue. Tonight and the next 2 weeks are about the kind of New Zealand we ought to have. I believe we can do better. I don't accept this is as good as it's going to get.
Mike Moore, thank you. Prime Minister, can I come back to you? On this very stage 3 years ago, almost to the day, you said we have a number of policies like getting rid of the super surtax because it's wrong. You increased the surtax just months later. It is a question of credibility, your performance in this campaign, is it not? A gap between what you said you would do and what you did. Why should people believe you tonight?
On this platform 3 years ago, Mr Moore was in the exact same position. He looked across the stage at me, told me and told New Zealand that he had balanced the books. That's what he said. He stood there, Mr Holmes, and told me and told New Zealand he'd balanced the books. You know, the day after I left Tika Witty, on the Saturday we won, I was told by officials that the Bank of New Zealand was going belly up, and that New Zealand, rather than balancing the books, had a $2.6 billion debt to deal with.
But
I had to deal with that. And in dealing with that, we certainly were not able to deliver all our policies. I've said
Prime
that many
Minister,
times.
you had been telling the superannuitants for years, long before Mr Moore said he had balanced the books. Can I have a look at how treacherous it must seem to many superannuitants your policies were?
But
as soon as you got... Now, please listen to this. When you got elected, you imposed a freeze on super in the 1990 package, the December package. In the mother of all budgets, halfway through 91, you attempted to claw back 60 cents of every dollar of extra income over $80. Finally, later in 91, you settled on a tougher surcharge than Labor, despite the assurances the surcharge would go. Why should anybody regard any statement you make tonight with anything but cynicism?
Well, can I say that when you're going to take off the surcharge, Paul, you have to, of course, have money. And if Labor spent the lot, you can't do it. It is very simple. Economics is very simple. If you've spent it once, you can't spend it twice. And if you're promising to spend more, you have to put taxes up. That's the reality.
All right. Mr Moore.
That's the reality.
Mr Moore. Mr Moore, despite the broken promises, despite the tax increases when there were going to be none, despite the new taxes when there were going to be no new taxes, the country's confidence is increasing. Exports are high. The deficit is down. Inflation is down. Interest rates are down. Why would anybody want to change that?
Well, if we can just hang on a minute, and I want to answer the BNZ issue. It is true, the BNZ was a problem, but every single recommendation we made, Mr Bolger agreed with, and he ticked the square. He said you had to rescue the bank, and it was after the BNZ. Several months after,
we had to rescue the bank.
I never interrupted you, Prime Minister.
We had to rescue the bank.
Please show some respect. The people want to hear. The reality was this, that it was a month or so after the books were opened, in the speech from the throne, written for the Governor-General by Mr Bolger, that again they promised to lift the surcharge. They're the first government since 1938 that has not inflation-proofed the pensions. You might have forgotten, but they also offered you a tax deduction for your super and your retirement.
Can I get you,
you asked me about it, now come to your
Can I ask you to address the question, which is why anybody would want to upset the apple cart on the present course?
Well, firstly, the deficit is $1 billion more than it was. It has gone down as opposed to last year, but it's $1 billion more. And I think, you know, I think that only Mr Bolger could try and claim that this recovery is all his work. The hard work on the waterfront, the hard work by the farmers and the exporters.
All right. Mr Bolger,
I would be the last person who wanted to put at risk export growth. If I made any name, I made my name as Minister of Trade, backing New Zealand business, backing New Zealand exports.
All right, let's turn now to the most difficult issue of the campaign. Mr Bolger, unemployment, the single biggest concern that New Zealanders have. You promised to halve it, on this stage, you promised to halve it by the end of 1993. In fact, Prime Minister, you've increased unemployment from some 8.6% of the labour force in 1990 to 9.7% now. Apart from the sheer misery of unemployment, there is the cost to the country. All you appear to be promising is more of the same.
No, what every New Zealander wants is more jobs. Every New Zealander wants more jobs, Paul. What we've got is more jobs now than in 1990. What we have is jobs growing now where they were being lost in 1990. We have turned the corner. It has taken longer, but it is now going in the right direction. Your own question was right. Why would any New Zealander want to put that at risk and face increased taxes,
because
face increased interest rates?
Because here is the next question. for the simple reason, Prime Minister, that despite your assurances that that there is a turnaround,
well,
the jobs are appearing, Prime Minister, the statistics also show the jobs are appearing at too slow a rate. 17 or 20,000 new jobs in the last year. But we know, and your opponents are telling you, everybody is telling you, you need 20 to 25,000 new jobs a year to accommodate those coming into the workforce. Where is the real evidence you give a damn about the unemployment in New Zealand?
Oh, look. Joan and I are parents of a young family. We give a damn about unemployment. Our children have to face the job market like everybody else's family. We care about unemployment. It reaches into our home. You don't change just because you have an office in the beehive. The pressures on the family are the same. My commitment to work in that direction was demonstrated by saying to Jim Anderton, the leader of the Labour Party, when he said, sorry, he might be soon, but the leader of the Alliance, that when he said, when Jim Anderson said, why can't we put politics to one side on this as we did on superannuation and see whether we can't pool our ideas? It was Jim Anderton's suggestion. I said, yes, Jim, we will do that.
Let's talk about
still
jobs.
Want to invite Mike Moore to join us. Why won't you join us, Mike? Why won't you join us? Myself, Jim Anderton, even Winston Peters says he will join.
Well, it's a reasonable question. Let's have an answer, Mr. Moore.
Well, I think it needs a reasonable answer, because I don't trust you, Mr. Bolger. And I tell you, you're amongst, and these are your friends. Imagine what the other people think of you.
No, these are yours.
I tell you something, that you did it again, you know. You did it 3 years ago. You've just told the people in an earlier answer that since you were Prime Minister, 100 people a day have come off
the registered unemployed.
That is not true.
The registered unemployed this year...
It has increased by 25%. We want jobs. I want to shift the unemployment benefit across to apprenticeships to help small business prosper. The Prime Minister has an enterprise council. I think it's a good idea. I want to give it some horsepower to process and add values. And I want to see, sir, I want to see our people doing something worthwhile in the community, not having 1 in 4 teenagers getting into trouble because of this policy. And I won't tolerate it, and it's over.
Everything, Mr. Moore, everything that you're promising on unemployment, everything that you're promising on unemployment is predicated upon, depends upon you getting this 4% plus growth in the economy during your term.
I know, it's a very modest statement. It's almost an understatement because the National Party have promised 3.5 to 5%. 4% is not good enough. But we think we can get some traction with our policies to assist small business, our policies to assist those to get to university and to Polytech. And really, you see, I will not surrender. Mr. Bolger and his team might have, because they've said in the budget, hey, there'll always be 10%.
No,
I will never tolerate that.
That's not true.
I will never tolerate that.
That's not true. Your own figures. Even with Mike Moore and his Labour Party's magical 4% growth, why I say magical, they got 0.1%, 1/10% in their last 3 years. But even with their magical 4% growth, which they pluck out of the air, he still is only going to predicate unemployment less than 1% lower than what it would be under national. Simply, Michael, I say again on this night at the beginning, here in Tikawiti, why won't you join us? If you have good ideas, let's hear them. Let's work together for New Zealand. Let's work together for New Zealand.
Very quick answer.
Because I have policies that will create jobs that are about helping young people get into the workforce, not pay them to do nothing. I will tell you what, you'll be welcome as a member of a select committee when we're government to help pass the legislation. And
we'll take a break there, Mr. Moore. We have to take a break. We'll take a break there. And when we come back, the audience... When we come back, the audience has its turn with the leaders here live from Tikawiti.
On prime time tonight, boaties are set on a collision course with the government over a rental row. And what Canadians think of the choices in their upcoming elections.
They're a bunch of liars, the whole damn bunch of them.
That's prime time at 9:40 tonight on 1.
David, Say the All Blacks.
The All Blacks.
Say Vainga Tingama.
Inga the winger.
David, say we lost. Come on, David.
We
lost.
Okay, we lost.
Okay, say cheese.
Oh, cheese.
If you want to smile, say cheese.
How did we get even more home-style taste into Dolmio sauces? By giving you more Dolmio. 15% more. 15% more ripe, juicy tomatoes. 15% more of the finest, all-natural ingredients. All authentically blended so they give you even more great taste and even better value for money. We give you 15% extra, free. That's how we put more of the good things in, so you'll wear a bigger Dolmio grin.
For a great adventure, because every time you pull into a BP station, you could be a winner with New Zealand Endeavour and BP. You could win one of over 1 million instant prizes, or whatever prize you picture could be yours, just by collecting the right pieces. There's Toyota Corollas, model yachts, huge cash prizes, and Sega games to be won, as well as Endeavour jackets and petrol vouchers. So get set for a great adventure with New Zealand Endeavour and BP.
To stop criminals, police must know what's going on. Crime Line is a chance to stamp out drug dealing in your community. So if you hear a whisper, give us a shout. And remember, it's their name we want, not yours.
As a Clear customer, when you join Familiar Voices, you can save up to 45% off Clear's already low base rates. And now you can save even more. Because if the person you're calling is also a Clear customer, you'll automatically save an extra 10%. That's up to 55% off Clear's low base rates. To join Clear or find out more about Familiar Voices, simply phone 050 0500. Clear, we've got people talking.
If you're determined to be outside no matter what the weather, there is a very simple, cost-effective way to stay dry. Marley Laser Light. They also reckon it's easy to install yourself.
Gardens, the complete garden show. Auckland Showgrounds, Labour Weekend. This Friday till Monday only.
Well, I just think it's a joke. 1 minute these murderers get a life sentence. Next thing you know, these thugs are back out in the street.
So you want longer sentences?
No, not necessarily, but if they give
Only one station gets this close to your views. Talk back with Leighton Smith.
The Ku Klux Klan, alive and well in the southern states.
White power! White power! White power!
They are no different today than they were 20, 30, 100 years ago.
So why is the Klan's grand leader being defended by a black lawyer? And a journey through the Middle East to test the chance of success for the peace agreement. Foreign Correspondent tonight, 10:15 on Television 1.
Well, now we are back in live at Tekawiti. We put advertisements in the Waitomo News, the local newspaper here, and the Daily News in the Plymouth, inviting voters to come tonight with their questions. Our first question tonight comes from Maxine Robertson. It's to do with something you spoke about on this day 3 years ago, Prime Minister, penal rates.
Prime Minister, last election you said National will not cut your weekly pay, your weekend pay, or the pay you receive for your overtime. Yet hundreds of thousands of workers are now working harder for less and penal rates are gone. How can we believe a single word you say tonight?
What I said was true. What we introduced a quite different law, and it's been very controversial in the last few days, as Mr. Moore and his team have argued whether they support or not. The Employment Contracts Act. The Employment Contracts Act.
Yeah.
The Employment Contracts Act enabled employers and employees to negotiate the deal that they want. In many circumstances, they have negotiated a higher base rate and have reduced the penal rates. That's what they have agreed to, and that is entirely over to them. See, we believe it is much better for the workers and the management on a plant to do that than for the bosses, as it were, on the employer's side, or the bosses on the union side to do it in Wellington.
I think, though, the question was about money going down, and the vast majority of workers are of the perception that since your Act was introduced, this is, I think, your point, wasn't it, Maxine, some wages have decreased.
But the average wage, according to the department, have gone up. Not by much.
Yours have gone up.
Well, some of the audience may want to disagree with the Department of Stats, but they have gone up. And
It's
that's
about
the
time you
measurement.
got out into the real
that's the
world.
measurement by the Department of Statistics.
Right, thank you. We'll move it along from there if we can. Thank you, Maxine. We go now to Maureen Milden. Her question is to both the Prime Minister and to Mr Moore, so let's address it first to Mr Moore, and the subject is, I think, violence in the community. Maureen.
My question is just directed to the Prime Minister.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Prime Minister, last election you promised a tough line on violent crime, yet reported violent crime has gone up by 25% since you took over. What policies do you have, other than adopting Labour's community policing and safer communities approach, to stop violent crime?
What we did is what we said we'd do. We toughened up the penalties quite severely, toughened up parole very much so, put 900 extra police on the beat. But we know... But we both know that's not enough. We both know that's not enough. And you're absolutely right. I think the safer community councils are an excellent idea. I'm expanding them. I also have, and this is the first for New Zealand, I have a unit that's working at crime prevention. We tended in the past to have police to catch those who commit crimes, with the justice system who penalises those who go to the courts. We haven't put enough effort, both through the bureaucracy, the police, the justice, the welfare departments, all of those, to prevent crime. And I've got a unit in my department which I've set up to coordinate that effort to prevent crime. That requires every New Zealander to make their contribution, and if we do that, I think we'll have a much better story to tell.
Let's have a comment from you on that, Mr Moore.
I think it's the most important question outside employment. But you see, I am one who believes that unemployment is a stress factor, that from unemployment and idle hands all sorts of mischief comes. The only person who denies the link happens to be the most powerful man in New Zealand who could do something about it, the Prime Minister. I believe in the community councils. After all, I've got to. We set it up. We set up the neighbourhood watch systems, and I'm pleased the Prime Minister says he will now advance it. But for too long, we've taken the Dirty Harry approach. And I tell you this, it's a matter of priorities for the police. I say it's wrong and a dumb decision to tell the police they can't have a sun helmet, because that might cost $30,000, but to spend $300,000 sending cardboard cutouts of police helmets into your letterboxes.
All right, I think...
Mr Home, is Mr Bolger inferring that the police were not into crime prevention? Because when I was at school, they certainly came to my school to promote crime prevention.
Yes. Maureen, I
it's
think
not
that...
a new idea.
No, but I think we'll move on from there if we may. Thank you very much for your question. Angela McDonald, you're Angela McDonald, is that correct? Angela McDonald?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is to Mr Bolger.
Yes, it may have been covered in a way, this question, but...
Yes, I think it has.
Well, ask it of the Prime Minister.
Both gentlemen have agreed that the rising crime rate and violence in our society, it's rising. And I'd like to put to you, Mr Bolger, that I simply can't believe that you can't connect the high crime rate with the unemployment rate.
No, I've never said there's no connection. What I said... no, let's listen, let's be fair. What I said is, it is no excuse.
That's right.
What I've said is that there may be some causal link, but it's only one. To suggest that people who are unemployed are all going to become violent is, of course, an obscene suggestion.
But it is causing stress,
we mustn't, I think, if there's been a mistake in New Zealand over many, many years, long before Mr Moore became Prime Minister of the Labour Party, it is that New Zealanders have looked for simple solutions. We've looked for more police and we've looked for tougher penalties. Both political parties have done that. We now know that's not enough.
But
we really have to involve the community if we're going to get on top of crime, because after all, those who commit crime in Tikawiti are the brothers and sisters or the sons and daughters of some other citizens here in Tikawiti. We all have to play our part.
All right. Mr Bolger, you promised more police, and we haven't got more police.
Oh, no, we've got 900 more police. I'm sorry.
You promised...
We've promised 900 more, and we have 900 more police.
You promised low ratios in the classroom. We haven't got it.
No,
all right, now we're moving on to classrooms. We're moving on to something else.
There are more teachers.
Can I go? Yes, Mr Moore?
We haven't wasted tonight. We haven't wasted tonight if we have managed to convince the last person in New Zealand that unemployment is a factor. I think we've got to go further. I'm pleased I'm pleased that the National Party are now accepting the neighbourhood watch groups, safer community councils.
I think we set
because
them
I've
up,
got to
actually,
tell
but-
you, well, you'll think wrong as usual. I've got to tell you.
Well, he's joined by me
I've
on
got
this
to
one,
tell
as a
you
matter of
that
fact,
we're going
Mr.
to
Moore.
do
I'd
more
like
for
to
the
move on.
victims too. We're going to have a victims charter. The victims don't get the attention the crims get.
The next question comes to you from Dale Frew, and this is a question, I think, for both Mr. Moore and the Prime Minister.
It is that.
It's to do with education. Dale.
User pays has well and truly been introduced into the education system. I just want to know simply, what, if you're elected, what your parties will do to reverse this trend and to introduce a livable allowance for all students without means testing.
Well, let's deal with the living allowance without means testing. What that says is for my sons and daughters, we will tax low-income New Zealanders so that they can get a living allowance without taking any note of my income. I think that's unfair. I don't think that's fair at all. I think the Prime Minister, and dare I say it, the Leader of the Opposition, are insufficient to look after their students, their sons and daughters going through university. Why should we not? Why should we not? Money is always limited. Why should we not direct that money to those who need it most? And that's what we are doing.
You're failing to do that.
That's what we are doing. But I would like to say, no, that's what we are doing. By means testing parents, we are making certain that those who are on the low income get the bigger allowance and those on very high incomes like myself get none.
All right, can I interrupt you there? Can I interrupt you there so
That
we
is
get
fair.
an answer? Let's get an answer to your question from Mike Moore.
Well, I'd like to be standing here and do what Mr. Bolger and Lockwood Smith did to you last time and say they would abolish all tertiary fees. I won't be so dishonest. We believe we can help, well, I believe we can help students from modest backgrounds, because at the moment, if you're earning $27,000, you don't get the allowance. We can take that to $35,000 in the last year, and at the moment you pay back the loans at about 14, when you're earning $14,000. We can take that to around $20,000. That'll help a lot more students, but frankly, I've got to say, there will still be a student loan, and we will work towards getting a universal student's allowance, but I want to come back in 3 years. I doubt it'll be Te Kuiti, but I want to be able to tell you we've taken the first bite, we're marching forward.
There we will take a break. Thank you, Dale. We'll take another break from our live broadcast from Te Kuiti. We'll return with more questions from tonight's audience in a few minutes.
Saturday, he's one hot favourite, and he's back.
Would appear that way.
With the bailiffs in hot pursuit.
I've lost the lot.
But when there's nothing else to lose, there's always the antique French loo.
This is Napoleon's commode.
Yep.
This is a fake. Gentlemen, I think this calls for another drink.
A brand new series starring the charming Ian McShane.
Anything to say?
Something small, dark and petrified, no doubt. Sounds like you, Lovejoy.
He's back.
I need a push.
And we're giving him one. Lovejoy, Saturday, 8:40 on 1.
Start the day at McDonald's with one of our famous bacon and egg McMuffins for only $1.95. At just $1.95, it must be time for a bacon and egg McMuffin.
This is one of the purest fruit juices in the world. And this is the factory it comes from. Rio Gold, 100% pure fruit juice.
Smarter clothes do not prefer to be drowned in cold water and bombarded with excessive soap. They do not enjoy being pushed and pulled, tangled and whizzed against the wall. They like instead to tumble gently through a just right wash solution at just the right heat until every fiber is fresh clean. Then the sparkling rinses and careful spins. These will always be smart clothes. They recommend the advanced AEG Leather Matte Wash System. Good clothes feel better for it.
New Drive Power Liquid.
It's a revolutionary concentrated liquid with enzymes that's more concentrated than other liquids, so it doesn't need pre-treaters. Wipe some along those stubborn stains, then drop the Drive Powerball in the wash. Just a little of this concentrated liquid with double-action enzymes will unlock and release the deepest dirt and stains. This is no ordinary liquid.
New Drive Power Liquid. It'll change what you mean by clean.
Hello. Oh, hi, Mum. Yeah, not bad.
Achilles teething. Yeah, oh, bit of a temperature. Panadol, colour-free. Nope, no artificial colourings. Was easy. She liked the taste. Well, seems to be working. Oh, Mum, I've got to go. Kel's away. Kel, see you. Bye.
New Panadol colour-free for children. Use as directed, and if pain persists, please see your doctor.
Moulinex.
The Super Trio vacuum cleaner.
Moulinex.
Easy to use, wet or dry. Moulinex. Designed for living.
Penny for your thoughts, Stanley.
He's worried about the future.
Yeah.
How he'll have to support us when we're old and grey.
No problem, Stan. We're getting an easy plan. See?
It's fairer because there are no high fees and we can even make some withdrawals if we need to.
So we won't be a burden to you in our old age, son.
ASB Bank. Your future bank.
Hello. Heard the latest from Guthrie Bowron?
Saturday only, Guthrie Bowron's gigantic paint sale off the back of a truck, 10 litres from $59.
I'd get down there if I were you.
Welcome back to Take a Witty, and the first of our hometown debates for this election campaign. Now, we've got a question from Mr Barbrese. Your question is to the Prime Minister.
Mr Prime Minister, last election you put your hand over your heart, said watch my lips, no new taxes, no increase in taxes. Would you do the same again this year? Or would you increase user charges like has occurred over the last 3 years?
No, I'm not sure your name. I think there's a wrong name on the list there, but sir, there's been no increase in the basic tax, GST, personal tax or corporate tax.
Oh, come on.
No, there's been no increase in those taxes. We did introduce an entertainment tax.
Yeah.
We did introduce an entertainment because we believe those large corporates who have great big yachts on the Auckland Harbour should pay something.
It was a
we
failure,
believe they should pay something. We believe that is fair. See, the average New Zealander can't escape paying their lawful taxes because they buy a 60-foot yacht.
So you put it on charges?
We think they should pay that. On ACC, that's virtually a self-contained insurance scheme.
Is it?
Yes, it is. And what is paid in comes from those who are covered, from the employers and from motor vehicle owners. That's always been so. Always been so. There's no change in that. And the amount of the money that is paid out by ACC determines the scale and the amount of the levy. And that's not new. That's been there since 1974.
Now, nevertheless, we can say, can't we, that income tax did not increase, nor did company tax, nor did the GST. Mr Moore, you do not seem, by contrast, to be able to give the same blanket guarantee that in your 3 years, were you to become the government, that income tax, company tax or GST would not increase.
Look, they're trying to scare you to death, Paul. Last time they promised the way, and now they're trying to scare you. We will not increase GST or personal tax to pay for our program. And Mr Bolger must think the Kiwis are dumb.
But how do you get the
New Zealanders know that if you pay a levy on your wages collected by Inland Revenue for the ACC, that, sir, is a tax. They know that the green tax for petrol is a tax. They know when they go to their hospital for the first time ever, they're paying a levy, that's a tax. And as for the entertainment tax, we'll get rid of it. I tell you why.
Okay.
It's a real, excuse me, please.
I said okay.
You're doing it again, Jim, please show.
I said okay.
You have your turn.
I said okay.
Okay. The entertainment tax was supposed to raise $70 million. It doesn't. It raises around $15 million. And what's worse is that there's 100,000 forms going into small business. To comply with it, they have to put nil, right? It's a waste of bureaucracy. The money costs more than it's worth. And worse than that, it was such a dumb tax that the convention business in Fiji's gone up by 30% as they dodge the tax.
I think I've got to pull you in a little bit, Mr Moore, and get you to address the question which was, will income tax, will GST and will company tax go up under any circumstances in a fifth Labour
I've answered that.
All right, thank you. Can I come back?
Yes. Mr Holmes, can I just say, I'd like to ask Mr Moore across the table. He said these New Zealanders are not dumb, and they're not. Can he explain to them how he's going to spend hundreds of millions of more and not put up taxes? Yes. See, economics is simple. Economics is simple. If you spend more... Economics is simple. If you spend more, you put up taxes, Mr. Moore. Very simple. You put up taxes last time by 152%. That's what Labor did last time. They put up taxes 152%.
All right, let him answer.
Well, the truth of the matter is the spending program is so modest. I wish, just as I told a student recently here, that I wish I could spend more. We're not. There's $200 million or so in expenditure.
No.
That has been audited by an independent company. That is the figure. If I can get 1% more growth, that's $900 million in the kitty. If we, I beg your pardon?
This is a nonsense. You got
Well,
0.1% growth last time, Mr. Moore.
Okay, I thought he might have something to contribute. I know.
All right, I think that we'll rein it in again. If I can just, for a moment, thank you very much, sir. I think if I can just rein it in. We mentioned education just before we went to the break, and Prime Minister, I suppose this could be regarded by many, and is regarded by many, as another broken promise, again made on the stage 3 years ago, that tertiary fees would go. Well, they did, didn't they? Yes. Lockwood abolished the tertiary fees, but he cut the funding to the universities, so they now charge the fees. In fact, in December of 1990, in that December package, you actually cut education by $276 million. The credibility again, why should anybody believe you on education?
$360 million more in education now than 3 years ago. That's the facts, Paul.
But the question there is the credibility.
Let me ask the question. There are almost 80,000 more tertiary students, some of which are here tonight. 80,000 more in tertiary students. It is true because we want to have those 80,000 students there. We're not funding the universities at exactly the same amount per head, but they get more. And during this time when the universities have said that times are so tough, their own reserves have increased and they now have $250 million in reserves. That's what the universities have.
And there we will stop it. I'll move on. Thank you. We'll go to another of our questioners. I believe we're going to Bethia. To Bethia, is it, or Beth?
Lynette.
Lynette, I beg your pardon. Well, that's not... well, what's your question, Lynette?
Mr. Moore, Mr. Bolger, do you believe that a well-educated population is the key to our economic growth or future? If so, how do you justify turning the universities and tertiary institutions into the elitist institutions that are very fast becoming?
Can you explain elitist? I think we'll need a bit of help.
Explain elitist, sorry.
Yeah, Jim's here.
In relation to your question.
The fees are increasing and it is preventing a lot of lower income people from attending university.
Bethia, I'm sorry that there's been a bit something of confusion here. I think that we've in fact handled this. We have discussed this at some length, the matter of the fees in the tertiary institutions. Paul. Yes, very quick though.
The point was the Prime Minister just said that he'd abolished tertiary fees. I mean, he's abolished one fee and set up a bigger one. No. People understand this, Mr. Prime Minister. New Zealanders aren't dumb.
All right, thank you. Now we go to you,
Can
sir.
I just answer the question? The question very simply was, is education our best investment? In my view, yes. I believe it is our most important investment. We have to get the best possible trained New Zealanders we can. Education and skills are important for us.
Thank you, Lynette. Our next questioner is Mr. David Donald. You are a farmer and you wish to ask both men about meat company investment. Let's start with Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, my question is, what assurance can you give me as a farmer that you will see that all meat companies, whether they be old, new or about to invest, are all given a fair and level playing field to operate on, so that I, the producer, can receive the full benefits of the free market and open competition?
I understand completely what you're saying. You know, it was only about 4 or 5 years ago that nobody could export meat unless they went through a board. I was the minister who got all the meat board and the companies together and abolished that monopoly to allow private sector people like this gentleman here to make more money and to process and to add value. It is interesting that the meat board is supposed to make an announcement on quotas. They're hiding that till 2 days after the election. I think there ought to be a level playing field, and I think the new participant, the person with a smart idea, the innovator, the risk taker, like the characters who set up this very good meat company in King Country, that sort of company ought to get every encouragement it can, and I spent 10 years working for them, and I'll do it again.
Just before you start, Prime Minister, did that go some way to addressing what you were asking?
I guess somewhat, but farmers have not forgotten what happened when the Labor Party
Well,
was
the rest of the
last in
country,
power.
sir, might not have forgotten the SMPs either. Let's go now to Mr Bolger for an answer to that.
Mr Moore voted against the deregulation of the meat industry. I promoted and voted for it. And that happens in fact there. But you're talking about the Meat Planning Council.
Yeah, I am.
And yes, I understand the concern. I believe that the council has to reach a fair... It's not a government issue, as you know. The council has to reach a fair position between existing companies, new companies and ones that want to invest in the industry. I opened up the meat industry back in the mid-70s, or late 70s rather, more correct, it was about the late 70s. I wanted to continue it open, fair and competitive because I believe that the marketplace is the best determinant as to who should succeed and who should fail.
Now, I would like a question, thank you very much. I want to move on. I want to ask a quick question about the Employment Contracts Act because what Labor would do with it, Mr Moore, is a matter of some debate in the last 24 hours. Is your question about that, sir? Thank you.
A question to Mr Moore. I understand that you strongly oppose the Employment Contracts Act and have given your commitment to repeal it if your party becomes a government. My question is, could it not be said that because of dissension within the Labor Party over this issue, there is no cast-iron guarantee that the Act will be repealed? However sincere and committed you are personally towards its repeal, aren't you playing with the trust of a disillusioned public by risking the possibility of having to break this election promise if you become Prime Minister?
In other words, which David are you backing, Mr Moore?
Well, we will replace and get... I'm speaking slowly so you can understand me. The Employment Contracts Act goes, but we're not going back to compulsory unionism, compulsory national awards or compulsory arbitration. We're actually moving forward. And I think someone every now and again, I mean, it'd be strange, or to give some credit, say, to the trade unions who've moved so far in the last 10 years. They don't want compulsory unionism.
No.
And the main one or two do. Mr Anderton does.
Can I just clear up a couple of points, because it's a matter of some confusion as to exactly what Labor plans to do with the Employment Contract Act. You recently gained the support of the CTU, Mr Moore. We could ask, I suppose, what deal's been struck on that. But in your manifesto, you say that you will return to collective bargaining and workers will be able to take lawful strike action in pursuit of a multi-employer agreement. Does this return us to the power of the unions where industry would claim it's impossible to operate?
Simply, no. If I could go on a little bit, Paul, no. You see, most countries have rights to strike, and this country's law at the moment is not balanced and it's not fair, and we have moved forward. Now, a lot of people disagree with me. There are those in the trade union movement who'd like compulsory unionism. We've said no, let's move forward, and maybe the only thing I was able to get out 3 years ago in this room, in front of these people, was a growth agreement where the workforce of this country understands that the only real security a worker has is when a company's making a profit. And the only money I can get in to pay for our dreams is revenue from profitable organisations.
There I've got to stop you, Mr Moore. No, to stop you, Prime Minister. We have to go in so that we end up with a bit of time. We'll take a break at this point. We'll be back. Thank you to our audience for your questions, and thank you to the people who came forward. Thank you, sir. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with some final questions to our leaders from Te Kuiti.
For me, it started when I was very young. At university, in fact, I can remember seeing the October Revolution in London, people in the streets marching, communism, freedom, I thought. And I, too, thought that maybe this was the answer. I'd been out, we'd been celebrating, came home, and we switched the television on, and immediately the news came on. And it was the Berlin Wall, tearing down of the Berlin Wall. And we watched these fascinated, we watched the pictures fascinated. There it was, the East and the West uniting. And there, in front of our eyes, was this Berlin Wall being pulled down. It made me feel good. It's good to see good news. It's good to see something positive happening there. And I was delighted. And seeing it happen before our eyes, seeing that the wall being pulled down and the people rejoicing, the police, everybody together, it was a wonderful experience for us. And to see it there live on television was moving. So if I'd have had a video, I would have recorded and played it back just to be happy again.
Introducing New York Peach Grove.
Merci.
Peach and pistachio, peach and mango. What would you call a double-quilted paper towel strong enough to carry this off?
I'd call it very handy.
So do we. All new Handy Towels. The handiest paper towel by far.
Look out. Oh, be careful. Here's trouble. Very clever. I was clean this morning. Oh, yes. Over there. Left a bit.
Handy Andy. Makes a floor feel good.
Here's a deal so hot, they bought the whole shipment. This new release Sharp Video offers rock-steady freeze frame, high-quality slow motion, and it's so easy to use. Matchless features, matchless deal. 10-10-10. With 10% off, you pay only $584, and it's yours from just $10 deposit. We'll pay your interest for 10 months. 10-10-10. Be quick.
Another exclusive no leaving offer.
The best at the best price, no leaving.
Guaranteed.
Dum-dum-dee-doo. Magic in the middle. Now with real strawberries.
This is one of the purest fruit juices in the world. And this is the factory it comes from. Rio Gold, 100% pure fruit juice.
It's on now. Resine's half-price shake-up paint sale. Save 50% on accessories and 50% on paint in 4, 2 and 1 litre cans. Half-price savings at your Resine colour shop.
He has a long, crinkly smile and lots of sharp teeth. His favourite thing is lying around in the sun. He's covered in hundreds of tiles, even on his tail. And when he opens his mouth, he looks like a pair of sewing scissors. Some people think he's a reptile, but we call him Morris. He's an alligator.
Well, we're back live from Te Kuiti with the National Party leader Jim Bolger and the Labour Party leader Mike Moore. We have just a few minutes up our sleeves. I'm going to put a question really to each of our leaders. Mr Bolger will go last tonight because it's his patch. Mr Moore will go last in Christchurch. So I go to Mr Moore first in this segment. What is the difference? You admit that your programme, the programme you're promising, Mr Moore, is a modest one. So what is the difference really between what you're offering and what National is offering? And why should somebody vote for you this time who didn't vote for you last time?
Well, the difference is that we have a program to get jobs. We're going to move that dollar across and use it more actively. And really, we're going to reclaim all the institutions our grandparents and their parents built. I think the grandparents were right when they said it is best for us to collectively insure ourselves against old age, that collectively we look after each other through taxes and build a public health system. I think it's far better for us, you know, to look after each other through a common ACC. And I think some of our parents were brilliant. I want to be half as good. There's another little issue that I want to clean up. We take a lot of things for granted. The right to fish, to flick a line, to park a boat. I think it's just crazy to sell the Queen's chain. It's crazy. We're going to preserve it. It is the #1 environmental issue of my generation. And for me, it is payback time. I want to pay back those people who looked after us when we were young. I want to make it better for the young people, so at least they have the same sort of chances I had and those of my generation.
Mr Moore, leader of the Labour Party. Mr Bolger, after the last election, I think during the first year of your administration through 1991, you gave the impression to the country that you had willfully deceived the country with a hidden agenda. Can you reassure the voters, and how will you reassure the voters you do not have the same in store?
We have no hidden agenda, but we do know We do know what the books are this time. We know we're not going to find the BNZ. We know we're not going to find billions of dollars worth of debt, any of those sorts of things. So we can say to New Zealanders tonight from Tikawiti, middle heartland New Zealand, say, we invite you to stay with a winning formula. It's a formula that's given us growth, it's given us new jobs, it's given us low interest rates, it's kept our taxes down, it's done all of those things, Paul, and we're just inviting New Zealanders to stay with a stable policy that's working. You're right. It's not only a stable policy that's working, we've got a stable government. We've seen in the last few days, Mr. Moore...
Just a moment, Mr. Bolger, just a moment. I'm sorry, if you carry on with that, I'm going to call the whole thing to a close and we'll say good night. Now, give the man a break.
It's more than he gave us. Give the Prime Minister a fair hearing.
Mr. Moore, very generous of you, very nice. Mr. Bolger, you've got about another 30 seconds.
About 30 seconds. I just want to wrap it up and say, look, we're a stable government. We've got our policies tidy. We don't have divisions. We're not deciding which David we're supporting like Mr. Moore has to. I think New Zealanders should accept my invitation tonight and vote for the Grant Thomases, the Tony Steeles and the Ian Peters and the...
But why, Mr. Bolger? The question I'm asking, if you can address it briefly, please, the question I was asking, if you could address it briefly, is why should people believe you this time when it was apparent to the electorate after the 90 election you could not be believed?
I disagree entirely with that. I reject that, Paul, absolutely, given the circumstances we had to deal with. We delivered as best we could on every issue. We went through hell to deliver assistance to the lower income by penalising those who voted National on the top income. That's what we did. No politician does that unless it's necessary, and we now know that we've corrected all the imbalances. We now know that New Zealand can go forward.
There we must leave it. My thanks to the Leader of the Labour Party, Mike Moore, and to the Leader of the National Party, the Prime Minister, Jim Bolger, and our thanks to you for coming along, for your contribution, for your enthusiasm, for making it yet again another special television event. Thank you very much. So we conclude the first of our hometown leaders' debates. We'll meet again in a week from tonight in Mr. Moore's electorate at Christchurch North at St Bede's College. Until then, that's Homes Tonight.
Thank you, Paul.